Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to tell you about my lean eating method. And really the goal of today's video is for you to really understand and get some clarity on nutrition. I've laid this all out here to go through with you guys so that you guys can get some clarity on what it is that you should be eating when your goal is weight loss and fat loss. Hopefully remove overwhelm, which is a big thing for people who are trying to lose weight. You know, you're overwhelmed with what to do, what to eat, when to eat, how many times to eat, how many calories, and so forth. And then show you something that hopefully can help you to get a nutrition plan that's not only doable, but it's sustainable for the long term. Because if you're here and you've been here on the channel before, you know that I am the anti-challenge guy. I do not like challenges. I like sustainable results. If you don't know who I am, I lost over 125 pounds. I've kept that weight off now for over 22 years. And guess what? I didn't do it by doing challenges. I did it by finding what worked for me and sticking with that and tweaking it year over year for the last over 20 years. But I've done a little tweaking here and there. I'm not doing challenges. I'm not doing these fad diets or these extremes. I'm sticking to what works with my lifestyle, and it's maintained, you know, me keeping that weight off, which is the biggest problem for most people. People lose weight, but they don't keep it off. They regain the weight. And sometimes, most of the time, they gain even more weight. So I've got some notes here that I took because I want to really get you guys to a position where you can find something that's doable for you and for your lifestyle. Look, most guys, they don't have an eating problem. They have more planning problem. And so if you lack planning, then you're not going to be setting yourself up for success. And there's a lot of different strategies and little tweaks that we can do. And there's a lot that I do with my clients to make sure that it's small little changes that have a big impact. And you don't end up feeling those changes very much, but they have a big impact on your hunger, on, you know, sustaining your diet and eventually seeing results. The other thing is your food is keeping you hungry most likely, and it's not your fault. That food is typically engineered to keep you hungry and to keep you wanting more. Things like ultra processed foods that are very high in fat, salt, and that have a certain texture that keep you wanting more. These highly palatable foods are going to keep you wanting to eat more. And so hopefully this will help you to find the nutrition plan that can help you long term, not just for the next 14 days or the next 3 months. I'm going to get into 3 different areas. The first one is what makes eating for fat loss different than eating when you're not trying to lose fat and you're just trying to maintain, right? So what makes that different? And what are some of the strategies that we're going to put in place to make sure that you hit your goal for fat loss and weight loss? The other thing is I'm going to get into my LeanOS eating framework, some of the basic high level kind of things that I like to touch on and like to hit on to make sure that you've got a framework and a system in place. If you've been on this channel before, you know that I always say, and I always butcher this quote from James Clear, but you don't fall to the level of what you want or your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. And so my program, the LeanOS program, Lean Operating System, basically allows you to put a system in place so that you can operate in a lean way, have a lean lifestyle, fit into the clothes you love the way that clothes fits on you. And by doing that, you'll be happy, you'll be able to keep your weight off, you'll be able to find something that's sustainable. But we have to get into the framework. So I'm going to cover what makes fat loss eating different. I'm going to cover the LeanOS framework for eating. And then I'm going to give you some real life examples. I'm going to tell you what I eat every day. And I'm going to kind of, you know, toward the end, I'll give you some examples and some things that maybe you want to avoid, some common mistakes to avoid. So stick around till the end of the video. Make sure you watch all the way through. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, I'll put the Instagram thing down here so you can follow me on Instagram. I put a lot of information there as well. So let's get into the first thing, which is what makes eating for fat loss different than just eating regularly. The first thing is, and the main thing is, you want to focus on satiety over everything. Because the way that you lose weight is by reducing your calories. But you want to do that in a way where you're not miserable, you're not starving, you're not getting hangry with your partner. You want to do that in the most sustainable way possible. If you're always hungry, you're not going to be able to sustain it. You're going to get off the diet, you're going to get off the nutrition plan, and you're going to end up gaining the weight back or not losing any weight. And so we have to focus on satiety first. And there's a couple of things that you do when you focus on satiety. First, my number one thing is focus on protein. You're going to hear me say this all the time. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. And then the other thing is try to focus on mostly whole foods. Again, going back to the ultra processed foods thing that I always mention on this channel, but They've done studies and they've shown that if you eat ultra processed foods, you average about 500 extra calories on a daily basis. Those 500 calories, that's your deficit right there to lose weight. So you're giving yourself an uphill battle right from the get-go by just going and eating more ultra processed foods. The other thing is that it ends up kind of helping you balance your blood sugar levels. So when you eat whole foods and you eat things that are very balanced in proteins and fats and carbs, and I already see that the people in the comments are going to say, just eat steak and eggs. The carnivore people, the keto people are going to say, just eliminate sugar. Look, I've done carnivore, I've done keto. If you've seen my past videos, you know that I've gone into these. The best diet is the one that you can stick to. And so if you did keto and it works for you, then good for you. Do it for life, great. I don't necessarily think that that's the best way to do for life, but that's because I tried it and it didn't work for me. The people that pop into the comments and say, do carnivore, just eat ribeye steaks, I've done that. It didn't work for me. So if you're telling me to do what you do because it worked for you, that's great. It worked for you. It doesn't work for everyone. By focusing on satiety and elevating your protein, I recommend 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. So it's 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. And then focusing on whole foods, you're going to make yourself less hungry because you're going to be focusing on those whole foods that are going to keep you happy. Your body, you're getting not only the fats and carbs and protein, but you're also getting the micronutrients. And so I always say, if you want to lose weight, the amount of food that you eat is going to determine whether you lose weight or not, right? Your calories. However, the quality of food, the micronutrients, all of the other stuff that comes with that food, that's what's going to help you to stay happy and not get hangry and to feel good while you're losing the weight and while you're in the deficit. Because if you've lost weight, you know it can be hard sometimes. And I've gone through it, obviously. It can be hard. You get hungry sometimes. The biggest battle you're fighting is trying to keep satiety high so that you're not going and reaching for a snack or reaching for extra food that you would in the past. The other thing is, I have to say it, I know I already mentioned it for the keto people out there, you don't have to cut carbs. You need to control your processed carbs. So do things like, I love sweet potatoes. I love white rice. If I do bread, I try to do very unprocessed bread. So I try to get it from Whole Foods, which is here in Miami where I live. It's the best that I can do is to get like sourdough from Whole Foods. It's a little less processed than if I go to like Publix or other places because they use, they eliminate some of the ingredients that some of the other places use. But try to eat unprocessed carbs. Even white potatoes, like russet potatoes, Idaho potatoes, I eat those all the time. Try to get your carbs from vegetables, fruit. So I eat cherries, I eat blueberries with Greek yogurt all the time. Those are some staples in my diet. I have a banana almost every day with my Greek yogurt. So those are things that I incorporate that are all very unprocessed natural foods. Let's get into the LeanOS kind of eating framework, right? So this is really a simplified version. Obviously, for the people that I coach, they go through an entire, curriculum program and we work together every week on figuring this stuff out on a detailed level. If you're interested in that, there's a link in the description. You can click that. But I want to get into kind of the basics of it so that you can come away from this video with a plan in place for you. And so I recommend 3 to 4 meals a day, right? 3 can be bigger meals, right? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then you can have a snack in there somewhere. Now, if you want to do intermittent fasting, sometimes I do intermittent fasting and I skip breakfast. Today, I'm actually skipping breakfast. I just had coffee because I'm not really that hungry in the morning. That's okay too. The thing I'll say about that is if you are going to skip breakfast, make sure that you get enough protein throughout your day. Because again, the number one thing we're trying to do is stay full, because then we're going to eat less. And it's going to make it easier for you to stick to that calorie deficit over the period of your nutrition plan. And so if you are going to skip a meal, a lot of times what happens when people skip meals, and this has happened to me, is you end up skipping breakfast, right? But then you end up being ravenously hungry for lunch or dinner, and you end up overeating. And sometimes you end up overeating the wrong types of food. So if you are going to skip breakfast, for example, or whatever it is that you're skipping, whatever meal, try to kind of keep an eye on how your hunger signals are throughout the rest of the day and try to see if you end up being a lot more hungry throughout the day or if it works for you and you're fine. And if you can cut out a meal and you can skip breakfast, I'll tell you, when I'm trying to maybe cut a little bit, like right now I'm trying to cut a little bit of body fat percentage. If you saw the last video, I mentioned a little bit about that. So intermittent fasting works for me. I skip breakfast. It's a whole meal that I cut out. And what I do is I end up making sure that I hit my protein targets for the rest of the day. So I'm still getting the right amount of proteins. I'm just cutting from the other areas, right? So 3 meals a day, maybe 4 if you want to snack in there. Whatever keeps you full, whatever works with your schedule and your work schedule, most importantly, because a lot of times if people are driving a lot, or let's say they're in an office all day, like you got to find what fits with your work schedule, with your lifestyle, whether you have a family, kids, all that stuff matters, right? So you have to consider all of that, because remember, we're not doing this for a month, we're doing this for a lifestyle. We're doing this for life. The other thing is, I will say is, again, prioritize protein. So 30 to 50 grams of protein per meal. If you have 3 to 4 meals, right, that's 150 to 200 grams of protein. For people that I'm talking to mostly on this channel, which is men over 35, busy professionals, people like that, you're going to probably want to be around that 150 to 200 grams of protein, depending on what your ideal weight is. And then, you fill the rest with the other stuff. So fill the rest with vegetables, fresh fruit, get seasonal fruit if you can. So things like plants, starches is, things like potatoes. Look, I like sweet potatoes. I like these Japanese sweet potatoes that are white on the inside. They're delicious. I like them better even than the regular sweet potatoes. And then healthy fats. So I do a lot of olive oil. And then, that's really the only, other than avocados. I do about a half an avocado every day if I have breakfast, or when I break my fast for lunch. I typically have 3 eggs. I have avocado. I'll get into some of the stuff that I do on a daily basis in terms of what I eat, so you have a little bit of guideline in terms of what I do. And for reference, if you don't know, I'm 42. I'll be 43 in October. I am 5'11", or maybe a hair under 5'11". I like to think I'm 5'11". And then I weigh about 184 pounds right now. And I'm trying to cut, I'm about 13% body fat. So I'm trying to cut down to maybe around like 175 to 180 pounds. Not that much weight, mostly just fat. If I stay strong and I keep my strength and I lower the body fat, then I'm happy with that. The last thing I'll say is you can have the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of your food should come from those whole foods, the proteins, the healthies, fats, the healthy starches, right? And then the other 20%, you can have a little fun with that. So maybe 1 or 2 meals a week, have fun with it. Have a little bit of dessert, have some, like I love pistachio ice cream. So I love when I go to have an Italian dinner, right? And I have pasta, I'll have, a little bit of red wine, and then I'll have some pistachio gelato afterwards, or a little bit of tiramisu. That's okay. As long as you plan for that, then you should be okay with it, and it shouldn't really set you back at all. One meal is not going to set you back from all of the work that you've been putting in consistently day in and day out. Let's get into real life examples. So let me tell you first what I eat in a typical day, and then we'll kind of go through some of my clients and what they've experienced as well. So what I do is right now I'm fasting in the mornings mostly, unless I feel like I'm really, really hungry, then I listen to my body and I go ahead and I eat. When I do break my fast, I'll have 3 eggs. I try to get pasture raised eggs when they're available. I'll have a half an avocado. And then I'll make this Greek yogurt bowl where I have about 200 grams of like Faye non-fat Greek yogurt. I'll slice up a banana in there, and then I'll usually do like 1 or 2 tablespoons of almond butter, because I just like the texture of it. It adds a little bit of flavor to the yogurt bowl. So that's what I have there for kind of breaking my fast. If I have breakfast and I'm not intermittent fasting, then that's what I'll have in the morning too. So it's pretty easy. The other thing I've done is I've added actually a couple of Brazil nuts, because I do my blood work. I just did my blood work with Life Force, by the way. If you need blood work, it's amazing. I'll link the link on the bottom, but Life Force is a Tony Robbins company. And what they do is they send someone to your house. So you don't have to go to like a Quest lab. You don't have to sit in an hour in a waiting room. They come to your house. They're super accurate in terms of like the time window that they give you. They come in, by the way, they don't sponsor this channel, so this is just me telling you my experience. I've used them for a few years now, and they're amazing. They send someone to your house, they take your blood. In a few days, you've got your results, and then you actually have a teleconference with a doctor to then go over the results and see what it is that they recommend moving forward. And you do that every quarter, so every 3 months. So it's an incredible thing. Again, I'll link the thing down there. I have a little bit of like an affiliate link, so I do get some credit on my account if you guys use that link. But anyway, if you want to use that link, go ahead. I'd appreciate it. If not, just go to mylifeforce.com, I think it is, and you can check out their information there. Great company, highly recommend. So what I eat in a typical day, back to that's my breakfast, or that's what I use to break my fast, typically around lunchtime. And then after that, If I do get hungry after that, between that and dinner, then I might have like an apple or something. I like having apples because they have fiber in them, and it's something that kind of satisfies me, and it's not too high in calories. So another way that you can stay full and keep yourself satiated is by having foods that are high in volume but not calorie dense. So what I mean by that is an apple has a lot of fiber, it has the skin on the outside, the flesh on the inside. Salads, if you don't put a lot of dressing, obviously, the lettuce or the spring mix or whatever you're using, that takes up a lot of volume in your stomach, and there's not a lot of calories in that. So if you think about foods that are very high volume, they take up a lot of space physically, but they don't have a lot of calories. Those are really, really smart foods to incorporate into your nutrition plan when you're trying to lose a little weight, because it'll help keep you full. The stomach sends the fullness signal to your brain in two ways. Number one, when you have enough food, right? But the bigger way is also when your stomach expands. And so by drinking fluids, so drinking a lot of water, and then by having high volume foods, your stomach is going to expand, and it's going to send that signal to your brain that says, hey, we're full, you could stop eating. By the way, that's one of the ways that GLP-1 weight loss drugs work, like Ozempic and Mounjaro and all of those. They work by slowing down the emptying of your stomach, so your empty stays expanded, and then it sends a signal to your brain that says we're full. They kind of slow that process down so that you're full for a longer time, and that's how those drugs work. They make you less hungry. That's why they're so effective. You can do that naturally by having foods that are high in volume but low in calories. Get more bang for your buck. And then for dinner, what I'll typically have is I'll have a protein. So I'll tell you what I did last night. Last night I had some lean pork chops, and then I put those in the air fryer. I don't even put any olive oil or anything. I just put salt and pepper, put them in the air fryer. They come out nice and crispy. They're delicious. They can get a little dry on the next day if you want to reheat them, but I like them, and they're super tasty because it's lean pork, so it only has a tiny thin layer of fat on the outside, and it's super tasty because that little thin layer of fat doesn't add a lot of calories, but it adds a lot of flavor. I'll do that with, I had cauliflower last night. If it's not cauliflower, it'll typically be broccoli or any kind of veggie that you like. Sometimes I'll do Brussels sprouts, which are great as well. And then the other thing I had was I had a sweet potato. So I had about an 8 ounces or 9 ounces of a sweet potato. You can either slice that up and put it in the air fryer and have it as sweet potato fries, or you can do what I do last night. I wrap it in a paper towel, put it in the microwave for about 6 minutes, and it kind of basically heats up and gets nice and soft. And then I cut it open, and then I put some salt and pepper on it, and that's it. So I've got my protein, which is, I had about 8 ounces of the pork chops, right? So that's about 40 to 50 grams of protein right there. Then I had my broccoli, or in this case, yesterday I had cauliflower. So that's my fiber and my veggies right there. And then I have my sweet potato, which is my smart carbs, right? My starch, but I'm getting fiber from that. I'm getting a lot of other micronutrients and other things that are keeping my body full and keeping my body satiated. And after that, I'm not very hungry. If I do have a snack later on and I feel like I still need to hit my protein goal, then what I will do is I'll have either an Oikos yogurt, which is non-fat Oikos yogurts are great. They're about 15 grams of protein. Or I'll have that with a little blueberries sometimes. I'll toss a little quarter or half a cup of blueberries in there. That's another way to get more food volume with not a lot of calories, because blueberries don't have a lot of calories. Buy the frozen ones, stick them in the freezer. Whenever you're going to use them, toss them into your plate and you'll be fine. And then if I don't have that, then I'll have like Greek non-fat yogurt, also with the blueberries. So either the Oikos or the Faye Greek non-fat yogurt. I typically like to have the Greek non-fat yogurt from Faye more, because I feel like Oikos is good, but it does have like that synthetic vanilla flavor, and it has a little bit of extra carbs. Not that I'm avoiding the carbs, I'm more so avoiding the sweetness of the Oikos, the vanilla flavor, because it has a vanilla flavor. Because I do notice in myself, and probably you'll notice this in yourself if you're really aware of it and track, but I notice that if I have more sweet stuff, I crave more sweet stuff. And when I have too many of these snacks, like I mentioned in the last video, the Yazo Greek yogurt ice cream bars, those are sweet. And so if I have one, I'm going to want to have another one. I'm going to crave more sweetness. Versus if I have the Faye non-fat Greek yogurt, there's no sweetness in there. So I find that it fulfills me. It gives me the protein I need. I'm satisfied, but I don't have that sweetness of flavor that's going to then make me say, oh, I want more of that, right? So these are little cues that you have to be aware of. You know, the more sweet foods you have, the more you're gonna crave. The more healthy veggies and protein and good, you know, sweet potatoes and good carbs and stuff like that, the more healthy food you have, the more you're gonna crave that food. In terms of my clients, I have some clients that travel a lot. I have one client that's traveling every single week. She literally has, you know, a house or an apartment that she bought because she's in the workplace so much in that area, and then she travels back home on the weekends. And so it's just all about planning. If you're traveling a lot or if you're in the car a lot, just plan. You gotta plan ahead. Look, it's a give and take when you're trying to lose weight. And if you think, oh, but planning is a pain in the ass, I don't wanna do that. Well, your alternative is staying overweight or staying fat. So you pick, right? It's fat. It's hard to stay fat. It's hard to stay overweight. It's also hard to plan. Okay, I choose the other hard. I choose the hard of planning, and I choose to do that so that then I can be healthy and I can be, you know, the best version of myself. So you pick and choose your battles. And I'm telling you, if you're traveling a lot, if you have a lot of obstacles in the way where you're not in control of things and you're in different environments, you better start to learn how to plan better, because if you do not plan better, everything's gonna fall apart. You're not gonna have control over things around you. And when you don't have control, what happens? You rely on willpower. And when you rely on willpower, that will only take you so far. Eventually, you're gonna make a bad decision and you're gonna eat stuff that you shouldn't eat. And that's when you start to fall off and you don't get back on. So for her, I tell her, plan ahead. She does a lot of client dinners. She goes out and she entertains. And on top of that, she's vegetarian. So when she's vegetarian and she goes out to a steakhouse, because everybody likes to go to a steakhouse for entertaining clients, she has to look at the menu and she has to think ahead on what kind of veggies can I order, what kind of salads can I order that are gonna not be super high in calories, because restaurants are notorious for having salads that are super high in calories. Getting the dressing on the side, and what kind of protein can I put on there? So am I gonna put on some tofu? If you're not vegetarian, can I get grilled chicken? Can I get something that's not breaded, that's not fried, something clean, right? So think ahead and plan ahead. If you're gonna be traveling a lot, if you've got client dinners, if you're gonna be in a place where you're not really sure of the food environment, try to look it up ahead of time and try to make sure that you're preparing yourself, because at the end of the day, we're always just trying to give ourselves the best chance to succeed by keeping ourselves full, by planning ahead, by being aware of the restaurant that we're going to and what's on the menu, by being aware of the types of foods that we're going to be around. All of this stuff matters. And if you're thinking, well, Eddie, that's a lot to think about. Yeah. Being healthy is a lot to think about, but being unhealthy is even more to think about, because then you have to think about doctor's bills and your blood pressure getting high and your cholesterol getting high and pain in your back and not being able to play with your kids in 15 years. Like you, again, it's a give and take. You pick what's important to you and your life. All right. So I'm just here to give you some advice and to tell you what's worked for me and what's worked for my clients. Let's get into some of the common mistakes that I want you guys to avoid, and then we'll wrap it up. So skipping meals and over snacking. If you do intermittent fasting and you're skipping a meal, or you're skipping a meal at any point throughout the day, make sure that you're keeping track of your hunger levels to see if you're really a lot hungrier later on or if it's just fine and it works for you. So make sure that. And one of the ways that you'll notice is if you feel like going and snacking, right? One tip that I tell my clients is if you feel like you want to snack, drink a big glass of water. You know, I always have my bottle of water here, and I'll take a big, cup of water like that and drink it. Wait 5 to 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. If you're still hungry, then that was true hunger, and you can go and you can have your snack. Obviously, be smart about the snack that you choose, hopefully high protein, unprocessed, things like that. If you drink the water, you may realize that you're not hungry afterwards. A lot of times with diet soda is the same thing. So sometimes when I'm hungry at night, I'm like, oh, I already ate my dinner. I already had my Greek yogurt bowl. Like, why am I still hungry? I'll have a little Zevia, which is these little ginger ale Zevias. I love them. They're stevia flavored. They're pretty natural. They work for me. It keeps me full. After that, I have one and I'm like, oh, actually, I'm not hungry. I thought I was hungry and I was going to reach for another yogurt. I was going to reach for another something. And now I realize after having that, I'm not hungry anymore. So make sure that you understand your body and get to know your body and understand your hunger signals, and realize that sometimes when you think you're hungry, you might just be thirsty. The other thing is living off of shakes and bars. So going back to the processed stuff, like even though protein shakes and protein bars are a good alternative, they're never going to be as good as the real whole food option. And so I've noticed in the past where I've, over relied on protein shakes and over relied on protein bars, that I end up staying hungrier, and I end up eating more. So one bar is just not enough, right? So just be careful. If you need a supplement with protein shakes and protein bars, that's fine. Pick ones that are low in sugar and make sure that you use those intelligently, but realize that you can also overindulge on that stuff because they are made to taste good, especially the protein bars. They're going to be a little sweeter. And even if the carbs are not high, and even if it doesn't have added sugars, the flavoring, the taste of it is sweet because it needs to taste good because that's how they sell it. And if you have that, you may find yourself wanting more sweet stuff after that. And then the other thing is under eating or sticking to your diet throughout the week, but then coming up to the weekend and binge eating. So let's say you're on a 500 calorie diet, or 500 calorie deficit Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday. All of a sudden the weekend hits and you say, you know what, I can reward myself because I've been good all week. And then you end up overeating on the weekend. That's not a good recipe. That's not a good plan. And I'm telling you, you're going to set yourself back. You're going to ruin all of your progress that you made all week on the weekend. I see this happen so many times, specifically with alcohol. People don't track what they're doing for alcohol and realizing that that's a lot of calories. One glass of wine is about 150 calories. And depending on the size of the pour, if you know your bartender and they like you and you like them, they might give you a bigger pour. And I know that sometimes I love my red wine, and I can tell that I've had the times that I've been the leanest, like a year and a half ago when I got down to like 6-7% body fat, I wasn't drinking alcohol, or very, very limited alcohol. The least amount of alcohol I'd ever had in my life. And it allowed me to get leaner. Not that you have to avoid it completely. You can have it, but just be smart about how you pick and choose your alcohol. And then remember that there's calories in them. So, don't overdo it on the weekend. You can have your 80-20 rule, 80% good decisions, good food, protein, unprocessed foods, whole foods. And then when you get to the weekend, if you want to do it on the weekend, have a little fun, that's fine. But make sure it's only that 20%, make sure you're sticking to the 80% of the good decisions. Now, what you need to do in terms of your eating, right? If you didn't see the first video, this is part 2. This is video number 2 of a 3-part series. So this is a video on nutrition. The next video that I'm going to make is on fitness, and that'll be the last one of this 3-part series. But if you haven't seen video number 1, I'm going to link it on the bottom. Make sure you go back and watch video number 1. Video number 1 was very, very important in terms of understanding a lot of things that we've been told and getting into the right mindset and understanding what it really takes to lose weight, right? There's a lot of lies that we've been told. I'll link that video on the bottom. I'll link it up here as well. And then if you're ready to go on to the next one, when it's released, it'll pop up here and you'll see it here. If you see another video, it's just because I haven't done it yet. I'm going to be doing it in a week or so. But if you want to know all the information that I just gave you in terms of how I work with my clients, but on the fitness side, that's what the video is about on the next one. It'll be released next week. And so again, you'll be able to find it here. And if it's not there, check the link in the description. If you're interested in learning more about coaching or any of that, follow me on Instagram. Send me a DM on Instagram. It's Eddie Roselle Fit. I'll put it here on the bottom so you see it. It's Eddie Roselle Fit. There's a link in the description as well. Follow me there. I try to put a lot of good content there. Anytime I upload a video on YouTube, I try to post about it there so you guys are aware of it. And if you are interested in learning more about coaching, just send me a DM and let me know. And I will talk to you on the next video. Cheers.